These days it's pretty common to come across somebody in the community who has printed their own deck of cards. It's fairly easy to do nowadays, and a lot of people are doing it. One thing that's always intrigued me are kind of the one-hit wonders of the community, and not necessarily the fact that they're one-hit wonders or one-deck wonders, whatever you want to call it, but it's that I'm curious to know why there's just one version. In my case, the Slow Hands V1 deck got funded by the skin of its teeth. We barely made it, but we did get funded, and immediately, as soon as we got funding and the decks were going to be a reality, as soon as that happened, I immediately started thinking, what should we do for V2? Same thing happened again with V2. As soon as the House of Playing Cards offered us funding for the deck, we started thinking about what we wanted to do for V3. I think it's pretty common as a creator to think about what's next and what projects you would like to do next. And I think it's so common that I would consider it an anomaly to come across a creator that has created something that they're proud of, that they don't want to create a second version of. And that is the case with my friend Ekaterina, or you might know her as Ekat. Ekat is a very talented and very popular Canadian magician. You might have seen her on live TV or any of her TV performances, or you might know her from YouTube. You might also know her as a cardist, or you might know her from the Red Fox playing cards. This deck is Ekaterina's first and only deck of playing cards produced. It's a very well-loved deck from Ekat's fans, and it does beg the question, why is there no V2? Not only do I have my theories, but I had a chance to talk to Ekat myself and ask her a few questions as to why there is no follow-up to this deck. So all of that will be covered in today's episode, and it is gonna be a fun one. Let's get into it. All right, before we get into my theories about why there is no follow-up to this deck, let me first explain to those of you that don't know what this deck is. Now, Ekat has done all kinds of videos featuring this deck and talking about the creation of this deck. I've been part of some of those videos, actually. The Red Fox deck is Ekat's signature deck. This is a deck of cards for working magicians or cardists or just collectors or people that want to play poker with their friends. It's one of those decks that you can really use for any occasion, as it does have pretty much standard faces with some color customization. It is printed on crushed premium stock by the USPCC, which is the preferred stock by most playing card handlers. The card backs are striking with a minimal back design, but a very deep scarlet red that really makes the cards pop. As well, the box has some embossing on it, and it's a fox kind of wraparound, so if you have 3 of these decks and you put them side by side, it makes a full fox. It's a really awesome deck, and again, it makes me wonder why there's no follow-up to this. Maybe a green fox deck or a yellow fox deck. Now, when I first met Ekat, I did a deck review for this very deck. This was a couple of years ago. She watched the deck review and somehow enjoyed it, and it was cool. She actually offered to send me a couple more decks, which was really nice. And she sent me these decks along with an invisible deck that was handmade with the Red Fox deck. And as well, there was 2 gaff cards. One of them had a green back design and one of them had a yellow back design of the Red Fox deck. Immediately, the thought in my head was that those were future color variations that we were gonna see. So I reached out to Ekat and asked her, and to my surprise, she said that the Red Fox deck was a one and done type deal. Now, she had been really cool and sent me some decks. I didn't want to pry and ask too many questions, but I was immediately curious as to what would make somebody not want to do a follow-up to something that they put so much work into. I figured one day I would do my own deck of cards and I would come to understand it, and that's exactly what happened, but I didn't understand it. In fact, it made me more confused. When you create something and you put your heart and soul into it, at least to me, my automatic thought process goes from completing the one thing that I'm proud of to thinking about what I'm gonna do next. And I think that sometimes you get into this flow of coming up with ideas and idea after idea after idea, and you start focusing less on executing these ideas and more about just collecting the ideas and making them into an even bigger idea that you're never gonna end up sharing. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case here, but I'm saying that that's my typical way of thinking. And so when you come across a project like the Red Fox deck and you know that there's not gonna be another one, you can't help but ask some questions. The first question I asked was a question that I asked myself, and that was, is there value in ideas if you don't execute them? Or I guess to simplify it, what's the point of an idea if you're not gonna do it? I don't know if there is a correct answer to that question. I'm not really sure if there's a universal truth or if it's something that goes from person to person, but for me, I like coming up with ideas, but what I really love is making those ideas into reality. So for those of you out there that make your own videos, or maybe you're into making your own decks of cards, or maybe you're looking to get into making videos or your own decks of cards, I think coming up with ideas is very important. It's kind of in the same vein as having a plan. You gotta have a plan, it's gotta make sense, and you gotta know what you're doing, but those ideas only stay fresh for so long because one idea leads to the next idea, and then you get more invested in that idea, you forget to ever do idea number 1. And so begins the cycle of having plans or ideas or half-baked ideas for 50 videos or 100 decks of cards that you want to do, but executing on exactly 0 of them. Again, not saying that that is the case, and since it is not the case, I thought I would get Ekat's take on the matter, so I asked her the same question that I'm asking myself, and here's what she said.
The fun thing about printing your own deck of cards is you can go crazy in gaffs because there is no copyright, because it's your copyright, it's your design. So I was able to print so many gaffs and create so many different gimmicks with my own deck of cards, and that has been the thing that I love the most about printing my own deck of cards. Not only I just love it, but it's also, opens so many opportunities when it comes to magic and just, again, printing things that you shouldn't be printing with bicycle, let's say, back designs. So the first thing is, a lot of you guys know that I've been experimenting with other colors. And if I were to release another one, it would have been that one. Out of all of the colors I experimented with, there was a midnight green color, there was a bit of an orange one, and the yellow one stands out the most to me, and I use it with a Chicago opener. I am not going to, again, mass produce any V2 or print it, but if I were to just perform magic and I needed 2 decks and one contrasted with another color, I would probably just make 1 unit with this color, because I think that's the color that stands out the most in comparison to the red.
I actually found that really inspiring for a couple of reasons, but the biggest takeaway that I got was that there has to be some filter between ideas and creation, because you can't create every idea that you have, and you certainly don't only have good ideas. Some of my ideas are absolute garbage, and I don't know that until I'm halfway through doing them, and by that point I'm committed and it's all over. But I think it's also important to remember what your goals are, because if a version 2 of a product that you made is not part of your ultimate goal, then why take the time or the money and the resources just to put it out there if ultimately it's not what you want? But that question led to yet another question, the ultimate question, the big question, and the one question that I think needs the simplest answer. Why is there no version 2?
Why did I produce only 1 version of these foxes? As you guys know, it takes a lot to finance a project like this, and out of pocket, I spent $25,000 to make this project happen. I didn't I didn't save on anything, whether it's materials or the quality of these cards. I wanted it to be the most premium for me to be able to use for a long time, for me to be able to perform with these cards for a very long time. In my mind, I had a lifetime supply for myself out of the units that I printed. The lifetime supply I was targeting was to keep 1,000 decks to myself. The yield out of 2,500 units was actually a little bit more than 2,500 because there's a plus minus with USPCC. So they printed closer to 3,000 units that I had to purchase on top of what I wanted. But you do get the extra units at a slightly discounted price because it's kind of a mistake on their end. So I got more units in. It was a very soft launch campaign, and I talk in depth about how to produce your own deck of cards in one of my videos, but I really wanted this to be for myself first, for me to perform with this, for me to use it, for me to keep a lifetime amount of these. I really like red. It's my favorite color. This is my logo. There's my name on it. It wasn't really created for others, but I knew that others would want to partake in this exercise and buy a deck for me just because they've been following my work for many years and they've been following my tutorials and learning. And I'm sharing a piece of me when you buy this deck of cards. It has been sold out since, and I didn't stick with my plan of keeping 1,000 units. I gave quite a bit more because I made it available little by little from time to time. I still sometimes open windows where folks could get some from my personal private reserve. So I would say that I'm a little bit under 500 units now, and the way I'm trending, it doesn't seem like I'll have a lifetime of these. I just have to really stop giving these away. And then I'll probably still have some. But I just forgot how many of these I go through when I perform. And I've ramped up performing, which I'll mention a little bit later.
So there you have it. At the end of the day, it just depends on what you want to create, why you want to create it, and what you hope to achieve after it's been created. As it stands, you can say that Ekat is 100% success on her releases, and if it stays that way forever, then good on you. I think really what I took away out of this episode is that it's important to know yourself. It's important to know what's possible. It's important to know what's feasible. It's important to know what's important. And sometimes there's a V1, and that's the only one. Before you guys go, I had one more question for Ekat, and this is something that a lot of you are probably wondering. So I had to ask her, what's next?
What's next for Ekat Magic is a really tough question to answer because I don't like to give away necessarily what I'm working on, but I can say that my focus right now is more in performing. I want to go out there and perform and show people that magic has still its place. It has really received a big virtual push in the past year, and I want to bring back in-person magic because I really can't compare. I love virtual, but I really, really missed in-person performances, and that's what I've been doing every single week. And yeah, I've ramped up my performing, and that impacted obviously how much video content I produce, but I think it's for the best because this is the time, if you're a magician, this is the time to capitalize on going back out there and performing. If you miss this time, someone else is going to take that opportunity. Thank you so much for asking these questions and making this essay type of video. I think it's quite cool.
Well guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode, and thank you again so much Ekat for filming some responses to my questions and helping me out with this video. If you guys haven't picked up any Red Fox decks, I think they're still available at Ekat's store, so I left the link in my description. If they're not available anymore, I'm sorry. If they are, definitely pick some up. You will not regret it. Now I'm going to turn it back over to you guys. What decks do you wish we could get a V2 for? I have a long list, and I think I might make a separate video of decks that I would like to see a different version for. Of course, if you guys would be interested in that, please do drop a like on this video, and I hope you'll consider subscribing for more awesome content just like this. Hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day, and of course, what does a fox say?